This is a lecture video, 684 through 694. We're starting in on the 1920s. All right, so the 1920s are called the Roaring Twenties because on the outside everything looks amazing. Times are great. People are making a lot of money. However, that is not really the case. There's a lot of underlying things that are going to eventually build up to a time period where we're going to have a economic depression. But the economy does roar in some aspects. Wartime and past wartime profits, supplemented by other income made by capital investments in mechanization and mass production, stress the standardization of parts and the assembly line. We already had the standardization of parts for a long time, since Eli Whitney with the cotton gin, but now it's it along with the assembly line to turn manufacturing into a well-oiled machine. With the expansion of electricity, now factories don't have to have a boiler. They don't have to be near water. It cuts costs. It also improves manufacturing because there is a steady current of electricity and it is cheaper that way to manufacture. Plus, electricity is being sent to homes. Therefore, new products are being made for the home. The biggest industry that booms in the 1920s is the automobile. And really, this happens in the late 19-teens. But it stimulates related industries, rubber, oil, and then you can go as far as anything on the roads that you would use, motels, hotels, construction road projects, things of that nature that are all growing because of the automobile industry. Other industries that expand and do well are aviation, chemical, radio, motion picture, are doing quite well for themselves. And you can see here the cars really started in the late 1900s, driving up. But you can see this graph goes all the way till the beginning of the Great Depression, or the end of the 1920s. And so this is why the assembly line is so successful. You can see that this assembly line goes really far back. And instead of giving the parts and build a whole vehicle per man, this man is making sure that the engine's bolts are bolted in. If we skip these guys because they're still working on it, but we look here, it now has a steering column and the steering wheel. So that's what these two gentlemen are doing right here. And again, this assembly line is moving in itself. It's not standing still. It just continues to move all the way through here. And they have the same machinery on the other side working their way back this way. And by the time you get out there, you have a finished car at the end of the runway. So just each individual person doing just a little bit more, just a little bit more, just a little bit more until the car is finished. Corporate mergers rivaled those of the turn of the 20th century. The spread of oligopoly, or the control of an industry by few companies, was particularly evident. The automobile industry, electric light, power, banking, and national chain stores led the corporate consolidation. So they're all going to come together. So there's very few of these companies around. Americans accepted the idea that size brought efficiency and productivity. In our time, we're the same way. Walmart, Amazon, the bigger the company, Facebook, it brings efficiency and productivity. Businesses attack labor, seeking open shop to break union shop contracts and collective bargaining. Not a good time to be a part of a union. Businesses use boycotts, yellow dog contract spies, and strike breakers to weaken unions. A yellow dog contract, let's see, Yellow Dog contract right here. It binds workers not to join a union. An open shop is a business where workers, where a factory or business employing workers whether or not they're in a union membership. So it's not a benefit for you to be a part of a union if you're in a business or in a factory that has an open shop. There's no benefit. Welfare capitalism was present as an alternative to unions. This is what companies will give you as long as you don't join unions. They provided medical services, insurance programs, pensions, and vacation days. Companies also promoted company unions. A lot of businesses today are welfare capitalism. They're going to provide you with benefits. That's what we call them today, benefits. When you're seeking a job, obviously you want to know how much you're going to get paid, but you also want to know what the benefits are because those are crucial. Union membership, as I said, not a good time. It almost cut in half from 5.1 million in 1920 to 3.6 million in 1929, and then drops off even further. So it loses 1.5 million and then loses another 1.5 million really quickly after 1929, partly due to businesses putting pressures on workers to not be a part of a union, as well as conservative union policies that neglected ethnic and black workers. So there's no African Americans or immigrants allowed into a lot of these unions, so they fall apart because of it. I like this slide here. The U.S. average disposable income, and you can see the top 1% non-farming average all the way at the top, and then everybody else all the way at the bottom. Most people didn't have any money at all. The top 1% did, but not anybody else. However, not all industries prospered in the 1920s. There are sick industries. Obviously, they're not sick. They're just not doing well. And these are the ones that cause the biggest problems because they are our main industries: coal mining, textile, garment manufacturing, railroads, shrinking demand, excess capacity, low returns, labor management conflicts. You just name it, they have tons of problems. American agriculture never recovered from the 1921 depression. They have surpluses, shrinking demand, forcing down prices despite improved techniques in mechanization. All these farmers buy into this mechanization, and a lot of them don't make it. It's easier than it was to grow crops, but it's harder to make money. And being a farmer, that's a tough work. Racial discrimination also worsened conditions for African American and Hispanic farmers. All right, so what's going on in the government? Republicans gained control of the Congress and the White House in 1920. Secretary of Commerce Herbert Hoover and Secretary of the Treasury Andrew Mellon shaped economic policies through the 1920s. These guys are seen as economic wizards. They are seen as, man, nothing's going wrong. Everything's great. We're just going to prosperity, prosperity, prosperity. Hoover worked to expand prosperity by building ties with leading sectors of the economy and supporting business efficiency, while Mellon pushed for a tax reduction on businesses and the wealthy. Republicans also curtailed government regulation, seeking a more collaborative relationship with business. So this is now where the Republicans are changing a little bit from what they were prior to this under Roosevelt and Taft, to now they are more pro-business. However, Harding being president, he has tons of corruption. And the reason why he has tons of corruption is because he allows his poker playing buddies from Cleveland, Ohio, to work in his cabinet. And the big one was the Teapot Dome scandal. And Secretary of State Albert Fall Secretary of the Interior, I don't want to keep saying state, Secretary of the Interior Albert Fall leased land to oil companies so they could pump the oil off that land. Well, that land is the American public's land. And so Albert Fall got lots of money, kickbacks, if you will, for allowing these oil companies to get their oil reserves. Harding said he had nothing to do with it. Okay. But it mires his presidency. Now, Harding dies. Coolidge becomes president. I call him Silent Cal, Calvin Coolidge. He said he wanted to help businesses, and he wins re-election on the Coolidge prosperity. He says the chief business of America is business. So the most important thing is business. Okay, and here's Calvin Coolidge right here. Reformers during this time experienced few successes, but two that did. The League of Women Voters, having received the right to vote, worked to encourage informed voting and social reforms. And then the other big one for mothers was the Shepherd-Towner Maternity Infancy Act of 1921. It's the first federal social welfare law. It funded infant and maternity health care programs in local hospitals. So if you couldn't afford to have your baby or give birth to your child in a hospital, it would help you with that. This is trying to curtail, at the time, people not having children in hospitals. Instead of having them at home, have them come to the hospital, and has an easy way for it to be paid for. And that is the reading selection, 684 through 694.